Welcome to Mystery Sauce, where we delve into true crime, paranormal, and the unknown. So let's just get into today's story. So the year was 1914, and the rumble of war had swept through Europe like a wildfire. On land, armies clashed in muddy trenches. But out at sea, the fight was taking a different and darker turn. Britain, the world's greatest naval power at the time, was used to ruling the waves. Their vast battleships were symbols of might, meant to intimidate any enemy who dared challenge them. But pride comes before the fall, or so the saying goes. The Germans were locked in a bitter struggle. They had realized something the British had overlooked. Their grand ships weren't so grand against a threat they couldn't see. Down in the murky depths, a new breed of weapon was being unleashed. So this is the submarine, or a U-boat, as the Germans called them. They were small, cunning, and packed with deadly torpedoes. To the British, fighting from under the waves seemed like an act of cowardice. But war isn't about fair play, it's about winning. And so the Germans were winning. At first, the losses had just been whispers. A lone ship sunk here, a damaged cruiser there, but soon the whispers turned to shouts of terror. The U-boats were claiming victims faster than the British could believe. On a single September day in 1914, the German U-9 torpedoed 3 British cruisers, sinking them like stones. Over 1,000 sailors lost their lives, and the Royal Navy could only watch as its ships vanished beneath the waves. And a year later, in May of 1914, a civilian liner called the Lusitania was attacked, nearly 1,200 lives lost, and the rumors began to spread. It was said this brutal act pushed America closer to joining the war against Germany. The U-boats had become a nightmare made real, their metal hulls gliding through the seas unseen, spreading fear and destruction with each torpedo fired. Against this tide of terror, the British were fighting in the dark. They needed a way to combat this underwater threat, but their old battleships were no match for the U-boats. Deadly games of hide-and-seek. The war had entered a new and terrifying chapter. A chapter written in the cold depths of the ocean and inked in the blood of fallen ships. So in the bustling shipyards of Hamburg, where the smell of hot iron and sea salt hung heavy in the air, a new weapon was being forged for Germany's war at sea. So it was 1916, and submarines were fast becoming the ace up their sleeve. This one, on the picture here, is christened the UB-65. It was meant to join the ranks of its brethren, a steel hunter designed to strike down the British vessels that dominated the waves. But something felt wrong. Even before the UB-65 had tasted salt, the workers who built her whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with unease. It started with an accident during construction. A steel girder, heavier than a horse-drawn cart, snapped its stick chain and came crashing down. It crushed the man before anyone could shout a warning. His comrade was trapped beneath, wailing to agony, until the metal claimed his life too. They said it was bad luck, nothing more. But bad luck seemed to follow this UB-65 like a shadow. So a few weeks later, poisonous fumes filled the engine room, choking 3 men who couldn't escape in time. So an investigation found no leak, no broken valves, as if the submarine itself had breathed out the death out of them. And that wasn't the end of it. During her trials at sea, a storm seemed to rise from nowhere. Monster waves pounded the UB-65. It washed the sailor overboard to vanish into the angry ocean of the Atlantic. Then a dive test went horribly wrong. A ballast tank cracked. Sea water rushed in through the hull of the submarine, dragging the submarine deeper and deeper into the ocean. And panic set in as the men fought to bring her to the surface. Their breaths growing ragged, their lungs burning, but somehow, by sheer, well it seemed, the UB-65 clawed her way back up, but the crew was, they were shaking. These were just the beginning. More accidents piled up, more whispers of a curse clinging to the submarine's steel hull. Some tried to laugh it off, calling it a superstition fit for nervous sailors. But there came the incident that broke the dam of doubt. So they were loading these torpedoes. One evening, And this is what the torpedoes look like. When a loud bang echoed through the vessel, an explosion, sudden and violent, it tore into the men. In the aftermath, amidst the smoke and the cries, they found Second Officer Lieutenant Richter dead, his body torn apart by the blast. Fear sunk its icy fingers into their hearts. Something was very wrong on board the UB-65, and with Richter's death, the whispers began to change shape. A darker, more terrible thought forming in the minds of the crew. Could it truly be cursed, or was something even stranger lurking within its metal belly, waiting to snatch the lives of those who dared to sail aboard? So then Captain Martin Scheel was not a superstitious man. He believed in hard work, discipline, and the might of the German war machine. When the story started, whispers first in dark corners and then shouted in moments of stark terror, he dismissed them as nonsense. But fear is a stubborn creature, right? And it slithered like a serpent through the cramped confines of the UB-65. All the men were starting to believe all these fears that were starting to creep around. And so it began with a sailor, his face pale, claiming to have seen a figure standing just beyond the bow as the submarine cut through the waves. He blinked, he said, and it was gone. But the figure was dressed in an officer's uniform, a face familiar yet twisted into a ghastly grin. And it was the face of Lieutenant Richter. Now Captain Scheel had stormed at the man, calling him a drunkard and a fool. There were no ghosts, he insisted, only fear, adult minds, and drunken hallucinations. But the stories kept coming, just like the waves. A crewman, alone in the control room late one night, felt a tap on his shoulder. Something's tapping him, right? So he swerves around and he sees Richter standing there, a spectral figure in the dim light. Before he could even scream, the operation vanished, leaving the crewman shaking and muttering incoherently. So, I'd be scared too. So even Captain Scheel couldn't deny the dread that now hung thick as fog in the submarine. His men walked the passageways with haunted eyes, whispering prayers or curses under their breath. Work became sloppy. Orders were met with hesitation. The once proud UB-65 was turning into a floating tomb. Then came the incident that left no room for doubt. A torpedo man inspecting the tubes in the bow compartment swore he saw Richter walk past him. Not the hazy glimpse others claimed, but clear as the living. The operation vanished into a solid steel wall, and the torpedo man driven to madness by what he'd witnessed. He hurled himself through a hatch and into the freezing depths of the North Sea. He was last seen swimming frantically away, his screams lost in the roar of the waves. Now this was no simple fear now. This was the dead clinging to the living, or so the crew believed. Even Captain Scheel was forced to admit something unexplainable clung to his submarine. So they called priests to perform exorcisms. Nervous replacements were shipped in to take the place of those who jumped ship or were deemed too unhinged to continue doing their work on the submarine. And for a while, that seemed to have worked. The submarine had 2 successful missions. Enemy ships sunk, and the crew of the UB-65 began to think that whatever darkness haunted them could be pushed back. But a shadow always finds a way to creep back into the light, especially the chilling shadow of a vengeful spirit. Now Lieutenant Augustine Grant, he was captain of the American submarine chaser, the USS SC-15. He was a man who believed in instruments and hard facts. When reports started trickling in of a ghostly German U-boat haunting the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, he dismissed them with a snort. Sailors he knew were superstitious lot, prone to seeing monsters and shadows when out at sea for too long. But those reports persisted. British patrol swore they saw the cursed UB-65 only to blink and then just find it vanished. German naval reports spoke of the submarine with the dread, avoiding the waters where it was rumored to lurk. Even Grant, despite his disdain for ghost stories, found a small seed of unease stirring within him. And that's how he found himself off the Cornish coast on that calm July day in 1918. The SC-15 was slicing through the water in search of the infamous haunted U-boat. He paced the bridge back and forth, His binoculars were glued to the eyes, more of duty than any real belief he would find anything unusual. Then he sees it, a U-boat tilted to one side, listing oddly even in the gentle waves. "Target sighted," he barked to his crew, an electric current of surprise surging right through them. Had they finally found the phantom submarine? Now as they neared, the strangeness became even clearer. Through the binoculars, he saw a solitary figure on deck, a man in a dark coat. He seemed undisturbed by the danger, simply standing there, staring out at sea with a haunting stillness. Grant's crew readied the torpedoes, aiming to sink the enemy vessel once and for all. And that's what happened. An abrupt shudder ran through the UB-65, followed by a sound like a monstrous sigh of escaping air. And with a final groan, the submarine plunged downwards. Grant ordered his men to search for survivors, but the choppy waters revealed nothing but debris and a few patches of oil. The UB-65 was gone, and it took all its secrets with it. Or had it? Could this be some trick? Some desperate ploy for escape? Grant himself didn't even have an answer for what happened, just an uneasy knot of question spiraling in his gut. His men, though, they said nothing. They wore the same worried expressions, glancing at the now empty seat where the U-boat and its lone watchman had vanished like a fading nightmare. Now the story of the UB-65 and its ghostly inhabitant faded into whispers legends as the First World War ground to a close. Sailors passed tales of the doomed submarine in shadow taverns, while official records spoke only of a torpedo malfunction that led to a tragic end. But the legend never truly died, not even when decades slipped away and the ocean floor became the final resting place of many a long-forgotten wrecks. Now, it wasn't until the early 2000s that the tale of the UB-65 was breathed back into the light. A documentary crew searching for lost shipwrecks stumbled upon the corroded hull of a U-boat. Experts confirmed this was the infamous UB-65, its secrets undisturbed all these years later. Yet the discovery only deepened the mystery. No evidence of a malfunction was found, and the crew's remains told no tales. Had they succumbed to mass hysteria, driven mad by fear and superstition dread? Was Lieutenant Richter somehow responsible, his vengeful spirit dragging the entire vessel down to a watery grave in the Atlantic Ocean? Or had some unknown technical flaw finally caught up with the unlucky submarine, claiming it in a swift final act? Now, these are the questions that echo unanswered even today. Some still believe, with a chill running down their spines, that the ghost of Richter walks the wreck at the bottom of the sea, a spectral figure haunting the steel tomb. Others prefer the cold comfort of logic, believing in hidden malfunctions or simply the cruel hand of war. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, where logic blurs and the impossible begins to seem a bit more plausible. The story of the UB-65 is a reminder that the sea still holds countless secrets, and some mysteries linger long after the last gun has fallen silent and that the last ship has sunk beneath the waves. So, that'll do it for today's story. If you enjoyed the story and would love to hear more, then please hit the like and subscribe button, and even use the comment button to leave any suggestions. Thank you for joining me, and see you in the next one.